But beyond the ceremony, beyond the handshakes, beyond the ululations, beyond the celebration, there is a bigger national question that we must be asking ourselves at such a point as this. Will this parliament truly meet the expectations of Ugandans? So this morning we're going to be examining the promises, examining the pressures, and also looking into the politics and the possibilities that are facing the 12th parliament, and that's positive and negative. And so joining me this morning is Honorable Ibrahim Samujunganda, former Member of Parliament, Kira Municipality, having sat in the 11th Parliament and having been one of those MPs that you would say was vocal, was able to deliberate on every matter, and yet the people of Chira had a different expectation from him. They wanted you to be on ground. They wanted you to feed them, to take them to school, to wash them and things like that. And if you didn't deliver on that, then they said, no, you first way. First of all, we want to first understand what was your translation of how the people voted for you?
Translation?
Yes. On terms of your responsibilities as their leader versus the expectations or the burden of expectation that they put on you.
I think after 15 years, people think you've served enough. It doesn't matter whether you've been a good MP or not. You'll hear them say, and in Uganda, being Uganda, you'll meet people, including those who have gone to school. So you meet those. But every election, sometimes 50, 60, 70% of MPs lose elections. Because in some areas the level of civic competence is low. In China it isn't. But when you've been around, people think it's time up for you. And that's what I read in the results of elections. I don't want to blame any other factor, because I have lived with winning elections on for three consecutive terms, making the same arguments. By this time, I think the major argument was, please, you've been around, we want you to leave. And I respect it.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of arguments, walk us through what lessons you have learned in the different parliaments that you've belonged to, from the 9th to the 10th, feeding into the 11th.
If you allow, I will even stretch it back, because as a parliamentary journalist from Monta, I started covering the 6th Parliament towards the end. So I covered the 7th Parliament, covered the 8th, and joined the 9th as an MP. At the beginning of President Yoweri Museveni's administration, the NRM wanted to win both the argument and the vote. So if you read the Hansards of Parliament for the 6th and I think 7th, you will see NRM dominating debate and also dominating the vote. At that time, even the choice of people to appoint ministers, the choice of people to appoint committee chairpersons depended on people's competence and experience. From Chintu Musoke as the Prime Minister, head of government business, you went to Professor Paul Nsibambi. From Nsibambi, of course, you went to others, Uganda, etc., Mbabazi. And all those were very substantial. Even the speakers, because you remember the first speaker, because Museveni was the speaker after the Luwero War, his deputy was Moses Chigongo, who was being helped by Honorable Kadaga most of the time. From that transition, you went to James Wapakabulo, one of the best lawyers, hugely experienced. From Wapakabulo, you went to Ayume. He'd been teaching at Makerere, written many books of law. And then secondly, Kadaga. So things have changed. From those ones, you had a front bench of highly competent, experienced people with presiding officers of similar quality and competence, to now a front bench that the president himself describes as fishermen, but also the presiding officers who are also fisherwomen and men. So at the beginning, the NRM wanted, as I said, to win both the argument and the vote. Now they only want to win the vote. They don't care whether they have presented the case where they have satisfied the public or the MPs themselves, as long as they can marshal the numbers and win the vote. So that's what you have. So the parliaments have changed. I remember when Oranya became the speaker. Oranya was a very good speaker. He spoke about the quality of debate in parliament, and he said, you see, we must be a parliament that will take decision according to research that we have done, the quality that we have put in. That's what Oranya set out to achieve. Unfortunately, he died very quickly. And then came in Amongi, my friend, who sits within the new NRM arrangement. For her, she even goes an extra mile. Even when you don't win the vote, you can vote yes, and she says the noes have it. Because I think those are the instructions. So the parliament has changed, the quality of us MPs has changed. There are many people in parliament who I don't think have an idea of what takes place as long as you go and pick your salary at the end of the month. But there are also still people who are quality. They are there. If you look at the NRM, people of competence used to be the face of NRM. But along the way, because NRM is not what it used to be, so you now have the president and so those who represent the president in parliament and the inner NRM don't necessarily have to be those with the highest competence. You can walk into parliament and Baram is the one who is authorized. When we are discussing the removal of term limit, the removal of age limit, Chibule from Mukono South, young, inexperienced, was the one who was whipping ministers. I remember Professor Kawejiri requesting for permission to go away from Chibule. I don't know if you know Chibule. And you have a whole professor who has been UP, I mean, I think he was in DP, asking Chibule, I need to go out, I have an emergency. So things have changed, and the MPs, I met the new MPs in some training, and they said I've been harsh on them. I said they can only be worse. Not because I am judging the 12th Parliament, whether it will be 13th or not. So that's where we are as a country, that you had a Parliament. If you read the Hansard and see the arguments made by the NRM on each and every matter that was introduced in Parliament, and then compare the Mbawazis, the Kategayas, the Wapakabulo, the Ayume, the Mushegas, compare them with the NRM that is in Parliament, they don't need to make any argument. If they have been summoned to come and vote, they will come and vote. Whether they have had, one time we had an MP, I told the country, he came in, I think, on a border. He didn't know that they were voting, so he came with his hand already up, and they told him, no, we are not the ones voting, it is opposition. That MP represented the area where I was born. So that's why recently when we were handling the sovereignty bill, I told Parliament, because we can't fit in, that these fellows you have mobilized for purposes of voting, sit them somewhere. You will call them when voting has started, so that we first complete the argument. So increasingly, the opposition has been winning the argument and doesn't win the vote. Mm-hmm. One time, the Honorable James William Chinobe, I think he's now a director at the NRM, we were in a conversation and he told me NRM needs to improve on its presentation, because he said these things are on record. In the future, people will read the Hansard. Out of 30 MPs who have contributed before a vote is taken, 20 are opposition, NRM has said nothing, and then they win. So
in high sense, they are using the opposition to just tukiriza omukolo do the argument for us, but we already know the position that we must.
It does, because saying. Parliament in itself is a platform. It's a platform. If you win the argument, that's also a success on your part, because you don't want to lose both, because you're arguing for the truth. If you win the argument, and you are an opposition MP, in my view, you have done your part. And that's why I encourage all opposition MPs to do research, make the presentation. make the NRM feel unhappy with the decision they have taken. And many do, by the way. You meet them in the corridor and they are unhappy. One time I remember, and sometimes you can actually register a success. Sometimes. I remember when Parliament was proposing to compensate Wasajja Baraba, eventually they compensated him for the meat packer. He had lost that business. They brought a motion from the Committee on Presidential to compensate an investor that they had not named. When I told Parliament that this unnamed investor is Wasajja Baraba, that you are recently sentencing for having benefited from another 165 billion compensation for Owino, for Nakasero, for State Square, even NRM MPs ran mad. And eventually I was alone because I had done enough research with the help of the road mayor. Eventually the matter collapsed. They had to go and when President Museveni returned the budget in the last financial year, and he said, you must restore my priorities, the country had been rallied against those of us who sit on the budget committee. We are very bad people. We move money from government priorities to our constituencies. And again, because MPs don't do research, when I told them that money was being moved from ambulances, from completion of Sagiko ward in a referral hospital, from seed schools, and 523 billion was being given to Magora, NRM MPs became wild. They became mad. There is one who grabbed the microphone. He couldn't even listen. Because as I said, in Parliament, NRM no longer seeks to win the argument, even in their own meetings. Because in the past, Museveni would call a caucus meeting with experts, and they would make the argument to convince their own MPs, say that they come and speak for that position. But even in the NRM caucus, they don't seek to win the argument. It's now like a military outfit. The last caucus meeting they had to deal with the sovereignty bill, they had two issues. One was the budget. And Museveni asked the Minister for Finance, Matia Kasaija, to make a presentation. And he said we are increasing the budget from 79 trillion to 84, and this is the reason, briefly. Personally, Museveni picked a microphone and asked MPs, those in favor say to the contrary, no. No argument, no asking. Then he invited David Mohoz to present on sovereignty bill. Same thing, after his presentation, those in favor said NRM caucus now you support.
In other words, it's mini parliament.
So that's why the MPs come to Parliament when they are ignorant. What the opposition must do, and which he has been doing, is to do research. These NRM people are also human. When I told them that money is being moved from your ambulances, from seed schools, from Sagiko wards, I did not need to make any argument. Eventually I saw them and I was celebrating. So someone will tell you, no, Parliament is about voting. It isn't just about voting. There is a record that will remain. I am still reading Hansard's when cabinet ministers stand against Obote in 1965, 64. The reason I read is because it was very interesting that you have ministers moving against the prime minister. So the opposition should take comfort in doing the right thing, in researching, in presenting facts, and leave the NRM. Some of the decisions can actually be challenged. When we passed the constitutional amendment removing the term limit, there are many other things that were Parliament had put, including a 7-year term from 5. I am one of the 7 MPs who went to court. And then we go to the Constitutional Court to reverse many things that MPs had passed. The trouble is that even the outside, the civil society and the political parties are also not playing their part very well. Okay.
Before we go into that, let's go back to hearing from you. Yes. What have been the registered success for the opposition participating and being part and parcel of Parliament through the 3 terms that you've been there?
Just to emphasize the same point that Parliament, in my view, is a platform that you'll use to do research and rally the population, raise their level of knowledge, do oversight. And we've done, I mean, to a very big extent, to a very big success, we've done that oversight. We've provided alternatives. Each budget, we've been providing an alternative policy, alternative budget. We presented accountability reports. The government may pretend, they may just thumb, but many of the things we have done, you see, sometimes I'll give you an example. When Museveni turned the budget, they told me he was on TV watching proceedings of Parliament, that he himself actually didn't know that we are moving money from ambulance and so on and so forth. When he brought a supplementary subsequently, he had now included ambulances and seed school. So we may not claim the success all the time, but when we speak and speak with the facts, sometimes they listen, not all the time. Whether it is policies on agriculture, on education, on health, they listen and sometimes incorporate arguments that we make. So if we are not there, there will be no argument at all. They will just bring a budget, put it there, and then the eyes have it. But we read those documents, provide alternatives. Even the laws themselves, they would be different. Just imagine the sovereignty bill, the way it was brought, if it went unchecked. But from our contribution, those of us who are in Parliament and those who are outside, I remember when journalists were speaking about me, about a particular clause, I don't remember which clause it was, economic sabotage, that if you broadcast or publish a story that has the effect of sabotaging the economy, you are now going to be fined or imprisoned. Because Parliament works differently. Sometimes you may go and lobby colleagues to support a particular motion. Sometimes you may go to present an argument and win. So eventually the fallback position was to now include just one single word, that when you publish or broadcast a story that has the effect of sabotaging economy, knowingly. So from our discussion, delete, not delete. Say, no, okay, let's improve it and put knowingly. But that people may not know outside. Because sometimes you need to lobby these NRM MPs. Some of the positions, they are not very strong on those positions. They have just been ordered to go and present this. So for the many years I've been in Parliament, we've improved the registrations, we've improved the budget, we've done accountability and oversight, we've presented many reports and motions. I don't have a list, but I am satisfied. We may not have institutionally done enough, but we've done something.
Okay. On that note, still analyzing quality and competence, we see a growing number of newcomers coming into the 12th Parliament, which you also experienced in the 3 times that you have been there, and them getting into the vice that you're talking about of being, of low quality and not being competent enough to the extent that they can now be bullied to just just vote yes. Don't worry about the nitty-gritty. Voting machines. Don't ask about it, the details, because we've been able to interact with some of them. Case in point on the sovereignty bill, and the nitty-gritties were not known to them, even though they had to have a position to make up the numbers to go for the vote. So when we see that as a growing concern within the House itself, what does it speak to the nature of leadership that the 12th Parliament is picking up on?
You see, the people who are coming into Parliament, it is possible to improve. That is for certain. I don't think I went in the way I have left. I was invited by the Honorable Winichis and civil society to speak to new MPs. And I told them, you need to read, do research, ask, because there are knowledgeable people in Parliament, some of them staff, including with PhD degrees, who are members of staff. But also the outside, read. One MP who has read, one MP, in the past, one MP used to defeat Parliament. I remember the Honorable Ben Watcher. When Orania made a presentation on the sale of Uganda Commercial Bank during the 7th Parliament, he made the government look so stupid that they had to adjourn the session and then go and regroup, because they had no argument, but they are just fed everybody to come and vote. So the new MPs entering Parliament will need to read. Because when you read, sometimes you defeat people who are schooled with PhDs because they have not prepared for a particular session. That day of the sale of UCB, Oranya came with the hips, but at that time, something that has changed in Parliament, you see increasing there is an appetite to allow everybody to say something. And then they tell them 1 minute, 2 minutes. That day, the debate on the sale of UCB, only 5 MPs spoke the whole afternoon. Oranya took more than an hour and a half, one person, because he had issues to present to Parliament. Then followed by Mao, Oto, and Kategaya, and the day ended. When we had a debate in the 9th Parliament on oil, the motion moved by the Honorable Sechku and Katonda and Gerard Karuhanga, we had a debate over 2 days on the same subject matter. And we allowed people who had done research, the rest of us, because we are benefiting from them, Katuntu, Sechkuo, Karuhanga. The rest of us just came in after listening. That has died. I don't remember any matter in Parliament that has been debated for more than 3 hours. 1 hour, voting machine begin. So I want to encourage especially the opposition who have, including NRM people, because I told those who were training in Entebbe that even if they ask you to support something stupid, at least understand it. Then you'll go home and know that what I have supported is wrong.
Honorable Samujo, if
Yes.
death has occurred at that level of argument, at that level of debate where men and women are supposed to reason before they make a decision, and decisions are taking such a short time, because we've seen the bills that you have passed recently in the 11th Parliament have all been quick, snap, and pretty much not following the procedure and the discourse or the debate that you are supposed to be having. So much so that one of those bills, the amendment of the Computer Misuse Act, had to be constitutionally overhauled simply because of some of the elements, some of the procedures not being followed. To what disadvantage is that to the Mna Uganda?
You see, the trouble with the...
Because at the end of the day, whatever you're deciding is for me, it is for my mother, it's for my
and
father.
I agree. You see, the trouble with the new presiding officers, my preference of a presiding officer is a lawyer. That's my preference. Even when I contested, I first appealed to the Honorable Nwagawa, the Honorable Asumani Wasari, and Honorable Segona. I still think that a speaker will be a better speaker if he's schooled in law. If you are not, then you need to do a lot of reading. There are safeguards in our rules. For example, when you send a bill to a committee of Parliament and that bill is brought back, the rules say you allow MPs 3 days to go and read and understand. But I have told you things have changed. That used to be important because NRM wanted to win both the argument and the vote. They no longer now are interested in winning the argument. So the NRM people, and please forgive me, I'm not abusing you, have been tuned like machines. When they tell them vote, they just ask. They had been, one time, MPs had been so accustomed to voting yes. So there was a time they were supposed to vote, no, that was the position of their party, but they all said yes. And then the speaker got lost. Then she had, I now put the question again. First of all, you have taken a decision. You don't have to put the question again. But because NRM MPs have been trained to say yes, yes, yes to everything, so this time they had to say no, they said yes. So that's how we have lost it as a country, that MPs will pass a legislation they have not read, they have not internalized, because even the safeguards in the rules have been removed. And I want to encourage you, whoever will become a speaker, you have a duty to return to the rules. Those rules not only help Parliament, they also help the public, as you have rightly said. Because I visited Liberia, they have a smaller Parliament, I think of about 70 MPs. They have assigned about 10 to 12 members of staff. So each MP has about 10 members of staff. Each day you are entering Parliament, you have files on each and every subject matter. Research done by economists, by lawyers. I asked the MP I was visiting, and he told me every decision I make has the effect of making or unmaking the country. So this information contained in a file from my researchers is to guide me to the right decision. It's not sentiment of political parties. Each decision that you make, we've just passed a budget. If you look at the figures of the population and housing census, poor. Government has a PDM program whose purpose is to bring into what the president calls money economy 39% households in Uganda. In Uganda, we have 10.6 million households. The average size of a home is 4 people. So 39% of that means 14 million people. 14 million. They are the people that want to bring into the money economy. You've passed a budget of 84 trillion, and only 1 trillion is allocated to 14 million people. And then government employs about 400,000 people. They are the ones who are in government employment. Their wages and salaries is now about 10 trillion. They also have another 8 trillion in vehicle maintenance, fuel, allowances, special meals, etc. If you are an MP worth the name and you are engaged in a budget process, your duty should be to move money from here. Because look, I was telling journalists the other day, in the next year's budget we have 300 billion for special meals and drinks, and people don't get to understand what these are. Parliament each day will serve me breakfast free. I am highly paid, but there will be breakfast. Whether I take it or not, you're going into a committee meeting and the table is full of. At lunchtime, I walk into the canteen and have free meal, paid for. I am highly paid, one of the 400,000. And then you have children who go to UPE school, you can't afford porridge for them. But you are feeding MPs. In the evening, all of them are in the gym because they have overeaten. They are in the gym to begin dealing with the food they have been eating a whole day. And this argument I have been making in all my responses to the budget. Move money from here to here. And the MPs don't understand. Those who understand are timid. They can't take a decision. So therefore, the value that a constituency must extract from an MP is an MP who will read, who will see through the implication of every decision. And if we had hundreds of them, there will be a change. Unfortunately, and I don't want to blame, but even on our side, in the opposition, I'm not only blaming NRM MPs, you also meet opposition MPs who don't read anything. They just carry their body into Parliament and sit. In the evening, they go home. And they do that as if it is an exercise, week in, week out. And when you tell the country, they don't understand. That's what they tell you, going back to your introductory remarks. Yeah. They think a good MP is one who is going to pay fees, attend every funeral, pay medical bills, and so on and so forth.
Maybe perhaps that's how the MP is making up for their poor performance in Parliament. That is then going to lead to long-term effects. Those would be negative effects for you, the public. We're going to take a short breather, allow you to digest on what has been shared on the table so far, especially in you having now to question what's the quality and competence of the person who's going to be representing your voice, your position, your opinion for the next 5 years. We'll be back shortly. Our Kickstarter here looking to the 12th Parliament as the swearing-in ceremony for day 2 does unfold. It's exactly 8:30 and that proceeding has started at Parliament, and we will be giving you live coverage of it here on NTV Uganda. Thank you so much for trusting the Bold Voice. I am Priscilla Regina Naluoga, having been having a conversation with Honorable Semujunganda and really analyzing Parliament through his lenses, especially as a journalist when he covered Parliament and then sitting in there for 3 terms, and what are the underlying issues that are affecting you indirectly. You might want to overlook it, but at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to carry the cross of suffering from it, competence and quality. And now we're being joined by Commissioner President's Office, Fred Bamwine, who's bringing us the governor's perspective on this conversation. What does the swearing in mean, and the representation of Parliament to the state, and how important this institutional continuity is to the governance of the country. Good morning to you, Fred.
Good morning to you, and I want to apologize. I delayed to reach you.
By NRM standards, you okay?
Therefore, I have that responsibility to apologize.
Okay. All right. So you found us having a discussion on the failing quality or the continuously eroding quality and competence of members of parliament. And this is something that you've been able to witness yourself. And from the position of government, as one who subscribes to the NRM, what's your assessment of the quality of leadership that we've had, say, in the last 3 parliaments?
One, I have been an active follower and participant in the politics of this country, I think, since the 90s. And my only observation is that in terms of quality, we are tending to come from good to worse. And it became more tricky after 2005 when we went into multi-party. But before, some of you would remember during NRC, those people, by the way, are not highly educated, but they were educated. But when you look at the quality of a debate, the commitment they had to their country, and you compare it with the current generation whereby you have majority PhD, masters, I don't know if doctors are now like, and you look at the commitment to the country, and also the quality that comes out, they don't match. Actually, when you go to a station at times with somebody who's called a doctor, and you start a presentation, you start asking yourself, do I need to go now and get a PhD? At times. So I think there is something missing in terms of politics. Because 1995 to 2005, the politics of the day, whichever, whether you are from opposition or from government, by that time there was not supposed to be even to be opposition. But of course there were those tendencies. But people who portrayed opposition were class. People who portrayed to be from NRM, it was top cream. But since we entered into multipartyism, and elections of parties became the order of the day, and giving over these cards, party cards, became the alpha and omega. Things have completely closed. But that, whether we are talking about that, it takes me back to talk about the nature of democracy we adapted. I was one of those who didn't want to go into political parties. And my argument was, we have had parties before. Did we become better? We have had one government, when a system called NRM. Why don't you compare the two and see? But of course the pressures of the day were different, and went into multi-party of 2005. We decided to go into multipartyism. I said, okay. But I think I'm now being exonerated that we jumped a vehicle which we are not ready for. For instance, if you look into political parties internally, there are no clinics to build leaders internally. To find that you have day, monthly, weekly clinics, intentional to build leadership.
So this is to say Chankwanzi does not
No, Chankwanzi is just a one-off. It's just a one-off.
Okay.
And even when you are talking there, you must be from a certain group. It's not for the whole, it's not general. Then two, mixing politics and money has also become a problem. That's why now, even it is not talking, we are not talking about politics, but we are talking about those who are financially able to influence the situation and be elected. Whether they have any quality of leadership or not, that's another story. The financial muscle within parties and in the national politics. And I think that's where we have missed it. And I think, to me, it tells me it's high time we go back into the boardroom and ask ourselves, are we really committed to develop this country at the speed we want? Because leadership determines a lot. The Constitution, Article 79, which establishes Parliament, it gives Parliament full powers of enacting any kind of laws for order, for peace, development. Now, if you have people in Parliament who have huge debts because of elections, obviously they are not going to concentrate on those laws. They will be there 5 years, see how he can recover the money he put in those elections. Then, of course, he's planning for the next election. So there's no strategic group seated to say, no, we have been here, we need to move from here to here. And it's across board. So to me, that worries me. Okay. Because money has been mixed with politics, and then I don't know, influence peddling. If you have not done something, then you cannot be given a card. So to me, we have distorted the whole matter.
You've made mention of you need to go back to the boardroom to revise some of these things. We know the bedroom, so in reference to the boardroom, what are you, or who are you referring to, or which is that you're referring to?
The boardroom, first of all, we have a country called Uganda. It has its boardroom, which is a cabinet. It has its boardroom now, which is Parliament. But as far as I'm concerned, Parliament cannot, you cannot legislate yourself out of power. So I can't see somebody who is heavily indebted, who has bought his way in, sit and say, you know, first of all, for instance, emolument of Parliament. Okay. We shall, to be a member of Parliament, it will be 5 million per month. I don't see it coming. So it should be other players. Who are these?
Speaking of
political parties within their, because they are the ones who produce this leadership. To be honest within their caucuses and say, yes, okay, we have won, we have lost. But what kind of quality do we need? Okay. By the way, I'm one of those. Even if you don't become an MP, even if you don't become a commissioner like me, you can have that humble political contribution to the country.
Speaking of political parties,
there are people who read in these books, Ugandans, who never became anything, but they are the ones we wrote about.
Let me talk to a political party leader here for the PFF. Honorable, what is the responsibility, or what's the place right now for political parties to overturn the conversation that we are having right now? Because I don't believe it sounds encouraging to the ear of the Ugandan that's tuned in right now.
I think my understanding of political parties, and I don't want Bamwine to blame the third parties. In Tanzania, let me start with I visited Chadema. When Chadema is choosing people for leadership, they award marks. If you're a professor, they say you have 10%. If you have an experience of 20 years, another 10%. By the time they select you to be a leader, they are choosing someone, because I kept making the same argument in my constituency. If you go to a school, you want the best teachers. If you want to go to a hospital, you want the most experienced, most competent medical doctors. how comes for Parliament you want grave diggers and you want Parliament to be different? So it defeats me that we make a decision that this guy is very social and send him to make matters that affect their lives. And these people are not stupid. Because I said if the voters were stupid, I wouldn't blame them. I have not seen a voter in my constituency taking a motorcycle to a health center for repair. That is so stupid that he thinks a motorcycle is repaired in a health center.
It is sick.
But they are so casual when they are making very important decisions. So the parties, ordinarily, we also take blame. Because political parties are supposed to be recruiting, training, and preparing. I want to blame the NRM because they have also played a very big part in this. I was recently invited to Makerere. I will not say by which faculty. And the administration said, don't bring here Semuju. The time was in Makerere, we had debates almost every after classes, listening to the professors, Akiki Mujaju, Nsibambi, and others. And then you ask those who are there, they will tell you we are listening to Mazrui, Mamudan, etc. You no longer have a debate in Makerere. The NRM has stopped it because they said debates incite students to strike. Even on TV here, we are lucky that we can still come here. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. You are chased from Parliament, you can't cover the president. So the platform that we are supposed to be using to train and recruit leaders, I remember the recent Gidi election, because there was violence, they say now political parties, you are not allowed into Makerere. Museveni tells you he started his political group at Intare. Went through universities. I spoke to Honorable Augustine Luzindana. He was doing economics in Nairobi University. But they were already teaming up. When I spoke to late Abu Mayanja, after completing his degree at Cambridge, he went to look for Bidandisari in India. Went to look for Deti Chirunda Kivejenja. At that time, those who were in charge of administration were trying to identify and recruit people who can make a contribution. We are now recruiting supporters.
And they were addressing quality and competence.
Us in political parties are recruiting supporters, those in government are recruiting supporters. So the Museveni who went for Professor Apollon Sibami, Professor Edward Rugumayo, Tassis, Professor Kawejeri, and so on and so forth. He now, I don't want to mention because them, they get offended. But look at the quality that at one time you had Professor Apollon Sibami as the Prime Minister representing and presenting a government view in Parliament. There will be arguments in NRM because you have people who don't want to behave like they are robots. You have to convince them. Now you give instructions, go and do this. So we collectively are to blame. The NRM more to blame because they are the ones at the steering. We were in Jinja for a by-election. I was the chairman for the campaign task force of the Honorable Paul Muir. I am glad he's back in Parliament. And I kept telling people in Jinja that in Muir you have a lawyer, experienced, so your voice will be heard in Parliament. President Museveni came in the last 2 days of the campaign and he said, you vote for an NRM person. They were so told me you mean to sleep and then sleeping dead. They will wake him up when it is voting. So that's why the president, who started by recruiting all professors, one of the prime ministers had forgotten Adiabo, was in Chambogo as the head of that institution. So Museveni would go to institutions to look for people, even from political parties, to choose the best. Because at that time he wanted to win both the argument and the vote. He now abandoned that. He now has an army. He gives instructions to go and implement.
Okay. So
as a result, I have met younger people who go at the university and they are happy because they have seen you make a contribution. But they will see someone high in an office with no content. So I don't know who to emulate now. I mean, they used to take the Mushegas. You go to Parliament, when they were censoring Jim Moise, I left Makerere and sat in the gallery. So the arguments that MPs made, the Dombos, today I don't think someone, maybe you watch TV to see the voting. So the place for argument has gone. So we are not interrogating. The other day I saw a report of the IMF, and the IMF said I think it was about, but they also talking about the productivity of Uganda, and we are not using 60% of it. We are using 40% of our productivity as a country, both the mental and physical and everything. So political parties, to answer the question, we have a duty to train and promote people who are going to make a contribution, people who understand things when they are brought. When we came into politics with my colleagues, the Honorable Segona, Mwanga Chivumbi and Mboga, Segona used to be the one to make the argument that in Uganda, the people we sent to Parliament were the last to understand. Now we are a group that will understand first. And that was our platform when we were campaigning. And I thank God. Nobody, we've left Parliament, but nobody will say we never understood things and we never influenced Parliament.
So on that note, then, yes, what do you speculate should be the defining element for the 12th Parliament? What would success look like for them?
You're asking me to be optimistic. I don't know if I should, because first, in this Parliament that we've ended, by the way, we haven't ended. There's a set of confusion.
Until the 25th.
Until 24th.
Until 24th.
That's when the instrument of dissolution, I am told, will be signed. So I am still an MP, not former MP. So you have two sets of MPs.
We
Confusion.
Still have to prepare mentally.
Confusion. In this Parliament, the 11th Parliament, one of the major functions of Parliament we surrendered, because our duty to budget appropriation means the President can prepare a budget and you say we don't agree with the budget. Museveni wanted it done different. He said if you don't agree, you don't change, you bring it back. What is taking place now, they don't even change a comma. I sit on the budget committee where anyone to do a report on budget. And then MP say, don't change even a comma, don't change a full stop. That's why the opposition, maybe the worker will need to go and fight hard to win the argument, because NRM has surrendered. I pity what will happen in the next Parliament, because this year and this financial year, we have from around December to around May, you are doing one job, budgeting. And NRM MPs have signed that for us, we are under instructions not to touch Musei's budget.
But who instructs?
So, if you ask me to be optimistic about the 12th Parliament, maybe I give them my prayers.
Okay, all right. Fred, when it comes to public trust, the public trust is now swaying left, right, and center. How can the 12th Parliament restore that public trust?
No, me, I'm not prayerful like my colleague Samuju. One, he mentioned about President Museveni, whom I have had an opportunity to work with for some time. And fortunately, President Museveni, most of the things he does, he puts them in the paper. And the same you can confess, you have not met President Museveni and find him wanting in terms of argument and in terms of articulation. That one. And if he wants to do something, he normally writes. He's not a coward. So for you to go in the budget committee and they say you don't change even a comma, I think people are failing to take up their responsibilities and then they blame somebody. I've worked with him and I've taken decisions. And in the government there's a lot of reporting. They report you and he invites you with other parties, and you tell him what you have done, and he said, okay, you can do your work. Sometimes we fail to take our responsibility as leaders, and then we look for somebody to blame. I'm happy that Semjo has accepted that parties have had an issue, because we went into multi-party, so we can't deny that. So for us to have leadership for the country, parties, including NRM, must sit what brings what you have had as political pressure groups? They are emerging out of a situation when people expect a reason, and there's no argument and reasoning internally. They say, let us form ours. Even the spirit of parties, when internal debate fails internally, that's what happens. So in Parliament, what I envisage, because the majority of people who have come have bought their way. I want to use that statement. Because they have used a lot of money as individuals. You see, where parties are operating normally, he mentioned the Chadema, maybe CM and others. A party is the one which sponsors a candidate. Once you have made an application, they have awarded you marks, and they said you are our representative in that constituency. They print your posters. They carry all those expenditures. So that when you are there, now you must go in for this national and party work. But now here we have, I don't know what we can call it really. We are under multipartism, but individuals sponsoring themselves. That's why at times when they reach there, they say, you know, but you belong to this party. So, as far as I'm concerned, of course the party position would do much. NRM will always, the decisions of NRM will carry the day. But my misgiving is that now we have a weaker opposition than before. When you look at the quality of the opposition members of Parliament who have moved out in one way or the other, and you put them on one scale with those who have replaced them, it doesn't balance. So even if somebody was quarreling about a comma, I don't know what they are going to quarrel about now.
The space between the words.
Because you see, why we cannot think the same way? We have a country we are responsible for, regardless of which party you belong to. Everybody needs a good hospital, a good road, and they are promoted through this Parliament according to the law. Okay. So if you have members of Parliament who don't measure to the task, don't be shocked if civil servants start passing their things. You know, civil servants, for them, they are permanent, permanent and pensionable. So if they see a loophole, they use that loophole. The work of Parliament should be to scrutinize these papers, say, why did you do this? Remember, ministers are just policy makers, but technocrats are the ones who did this work.
So on that note,
I'm seeing
as we are closing the conversation, Fred, what would be your word of caution to the next?
My word of caution, one, to members of Parliament of NRM. And the NRM was generally a political party. We have almost 72%. Me, I think we have not fallen in things. You have an army of a country of young people who need a good future. So you must create hope for them. Hope means you must have an environment of creating jobs. The productivity Simju has mentioned about must be seen in terms of, in real terms. We must create an environment to find that the young generation feel they are part and parcel of this country, and therefore NRM as a party has that responsibility. Fortunately, I have their documents, the manifesto is here, I have the president's speech. There is nothing short if they stick to what has been documented.
Okay.
So they have that responsibility. Now, to political opposition, much as they have, those who have won, even if you have not won by either way, like Semu and others, still you have that responsibility to check the excesses of government and also present your alternative view. Because when there is no alternative view, people may think the other one is the only one right. But you may say, no, there's a different way how to do things here.
All right, thank
so
you
as
so
far
much, Fred.
as a Ugandan who want to see a better Uganda, all of us political actors, we must get out of our shells and be observant, critical observants,
Honorable Semuju,
and also
yes.
be to the task.
Your word of caution to the next cohort of
I
leaders.
think, first of all, there are people who have returned to Parliament. Some of them a bit tired. Crispus Chionga, Professor Kamuntu, like him. They are knowledgeable. I hope Parliament will utilize them. If you look, position Mwiru is back, Gerard Karahang and others. The group at Parliament is not beyond training. The opportunity I have got to interact with the new ones, I've asked them to train themselves. I was telling them I became a shadow minister for finance. I don't have I'm a journalist, I did journalism. But because I was given a task with no education background, I've been reading, going to finance, checking their websites, because I don't want to be found wanting. An MP came to me and he said, you as an economist, he thought I was actually...
Okay.
So these MPs, the new ones, will need to read. Kenny Ruchams, he is funny, but Ruchams used to read. You go to the committee room, and you find Ruchams is reading, preparing for a session.
All right.
So the MPs will need to read, parties will need to train them, even Parliament. Parliament has, by the way, lots of facilities, from library to research to institute. Kadaga started there an institute to teach
But it
MPs.
must encourage its people to go to these facilities.
I hope they will. You see,
them.
I had a vice chairperson of the Committee on National Economy, because each MP you are given a computer and a printer and so on. That MP from Soga didn't even know how to open his email. He was always waiting for the secretary.
All right, and that's going to be, a representation
But also Parliament
of the
has an issue
Parliament.
of changing perception.
We definitely will be continuing these conversations over the next few hours. We're going to be joined by Mwasu Zemutia team that's also going to be bring us into perspective with some of the leaders they're having a sit down with. Then we'll have another session that we will continue this debate, scrutinizing what is of the 12th Parliament, especially when it comes to being remembered either for transformation or the missed opportunities when we are having this discussion in 2031. And so effectiveness in terms of representation and deciding what will be the position of your people is definitely a critical time, and it's of national interest. And beyond today, it shouldn't be about politics, but about the people, because at the end of the day, it's the people that have the power. Fred Bamwine, Commissioner, President's Office, thank you so much for your time with us. Honorable Semuju Nganda, thank you so much for representing the people of Chira Municipality and also making time to be with us here in Morning at NTV as we take a bend handover to Stella Nante on Mwasu Zemutia.